Hi, I'm Jan with Jan's Jewelry Supplies. Welcome to another soldering video. Today we're going to be making this piece. This piece combines soldering with what I consider a lost art of wiring to a screen finding. I'm going to go ahead and go over the pieces that are needed for this project. I'm using 11 orange coral vintage stones. These are actually cabochons, but I've turned them over because they are very nice quality cabochon and they have a very nice edge to them, and I've turned them over so that they will fit better in these cupped settings. So you need 11 of the stones and 11 settings. And I'm also using 6 8mm Hyacinth rhinestones and 5 8mm Fuchsia stones. And you will need 11 8mm or 39 SS settings with those. And you will also need 7. These are 8mm by 6mm faceted glass beads. And you will need 16 of these little 5mm flower beads. These are just flat beads. These are also vintage beads, and they are hyacinth luster. 52 size 5 or 6 orange AB seed beads. 16 head pins, and these are 1.5-inch head pins. They're just brass head pins. And 1 8mm jump ring. This is an 18 gauge jump ring. Doesn't necessarily have to be an 18 gauge jump ring. This is the screen finding, and this is its back. You'll see it has prongs on the edge of it. And these are all of the pieces that you will need for this project. I'm going to go ahead and roll out my Play-Doh and get started. I have my Play-Doh laid out, but before I lay my stones down, I need to mark the screen where the prongs are, because whenever you put the back on, you can't have any stones soldered to this area because then you will not be able to close the prongs. So I'm just going to set the screen on top of here and mark where the prongs lay. I'm not going to be able to see this when I'm soldering, so I need to turn this over. And mark it on the back side as well. Now that I have it marked where the prongs are going to end up on the screen, I'm going to go ahead and lay the screen down, and I am going to start laying the stones around it. When I lay the stones around it, I need to get up very close to the screen. I have my larger stones laid out around the screen, and you can see there's a slight gap between the rhinestones where the prongs are supposed to go. And on the little one, since I'm alternating the colors, I've laid them out according to the way I am going to set them on the project. If you don't lay them out in advance, then there's a chance that you're going to get them in the wrong order, which is not a big deal. You can just take them out of the settings later and switch them around, but it's easier if you get it right the first time. I'm going to go ahead and lay these out. I have all my rhinestones laid out around the screen now, and before I begin soldering, I want to double check to make sure my stones are not going to prohibit me getting the back on there after I've soldered. So I've got a little trick here. I'm just taking a head pin, and so it doesn't go through this hole, I'm going to put one of these little flower beads on it because it's flat, and I'm just going to run it through the hole in the back of this, and I'm going to set it on top just to check and make sure that I had my marks in the correct place. And it looks like my prongs will be able to fold down. I'm going to go ahead and start soldering. I'm just going to turn on my torch, start heating. Just need to heat the metal. Once it gets hot, you just dab it, remove the heat, dab it with the solder. The solder I used on this has a 300-degree melting point, so it melts pretty easily. I have finished soldering. Now that I'm done soldering, I want to pull this out and test it to see how stable it is. It seems pretty stable. And you can see right here, I wasn't able to link these pieces together, but that's okay because I do have it soldered to the screen at just about every point on every setting, so that gives me my stability. Now that I know that the piece is stable, I just look for loose joints to see whether or not it was soldered well. Now that I know that it is soldered tight and it's very stable, I'm going to go ahead and add the jump ring. I'm using a third hand to attach my jump ring. I just set it in the jaws of the third hand, and the opening of the jump ring is right here. I want that to go next to my piece. So I'm just going to twist this down and get it on there straight. And you want to make sure your piece is secure in the dough before you start applying more heat, or your pieces are going to drop when they get hot. So it is secure in the Play-Doh. I'm going to go ahead and add the jump ring. Just going to apply heat to the setting in the jump ring and remove the heat and just dab it. Now that the piece is cooled, I'm just going to remove the third hand and test to make sure my jump ring is on there secure, which it is. And I'm going to go rinse this piece off, and I'm done with the soldering portion of it. I just need to wire it now. I need 3 pieces of wire with the seed beads on it, and to keep the beads from sliding off the end while I'm placing them on the wire, I'm just going to do a little loop at the end, and I can cut it off later. I've already got 10 beads on here. I need 13. Once I get my seed beads on, I'm just going to put the wire together and get the seed beads on there tight, and I'm just going to do a couple of twists like that. So I have 3 of these. One of them has 15 beads and the other 2 have 13 beads. I'm going to go ahead and start putting these on the pendant. I'm going to take the shorter ones and put them on the bottom, and you're just going to stick them in the hole, in 2 of the holes towards the bottom, and get them as close as you can. You just turn it over to the back side, and back here you want to do a little more than 2 twists, probably about 3, maybe 4 twists to get it on there tight. Once you've got it twisted, you just cut it off. So now I have that. And then I'm going to do another one right next to it. And then I'm going to do one just above these 2 in the center of it. I now have my 3 beaded lips on the bottom. I'm going to start adding the 8 by 6 millimeter beads to the rest of the screen. Instead of working blindly, I find it easier to go ahead and take my beads and lay them on the top, just to figure out where I want to place them. I'm using 7, so I'm going to do basically 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom, 2 on each side, and 1 in the center. And that's not going to completely fill in the screen. However, I am going to go back with seed beads as well. That just gives me an idea of my placement. I already have my beads basically set up. I'm just putting a flower bead on a head pin, and then the 8 by 6 millimeter bead on there. I'm just going to start putting them on the screen. I want to move it over just off center. Sometimes I'll go ahead and lay 2 in there to see how they're going to fit and change my placement to make sure my first one is correct. So I've got my first one on there. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over, and I'm going to leave about 1/4 of an inch, actually between 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 inch. I'm going to cut it off. And then I'm just going to take some, actually I'm using bent nose pliers. Needle nose are actually easier, but I have these sitting here. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn this. And you want to make a complete loop and then smash the loop so it can't come back out through the other side. And this is going to feel real wobbly, but as you start filling in the rest of the beads, it'll tighten up. I'm going to go ahead and set my second bead on there. And the placement doesn't have to be exact. Just going to go ahead and cut it off. Turn the loop and smash it. And you want the loop closed. If you just have a little hook, then it will eventually work its way out. You don't want that. So now I have two. I'm going to continue on with the rest of the beads. I have all my beads wired on now. As you see, you can still see the screen. Just to add a little interest, I am going to add seed beads with the flower on top of the seed beads. And this is not an exact science. You just want to go in and start filling in the holes. And this will start to tighten up the work. And you do this just the same way that you did the other beads. Just turn it over. Cut it off. Twist it. And smash it. And then go in and continue to add more beads. Okay, I have all of my beads filled in. I used 7 of the 8x6mm beads with the flower on top, and I used 9 of the seed beads with the flower on top. Now all I have left to do is to finish off the back. And to do so, you want to flatten your loops back here down close to the screen as best you can. And to finish it off, you just take your prong back, set it on top of the screen. Okay. Have it on there. Now all you have to do is go in and bend the prongs up. I'm just going to take my needle nose pliers and apply some pressure. Okay. If when you solder this you do get too close to where the prongs are going to lay and you can't get the back on, all is not lost. What you can do is you can cut the prongs off and just solder it on. I don't really like doing that because if I have to come back and make repairs to the screen at some point, it's impossible to do. You don't have any way of getting to it. And the other thing is you'll have to push all of this down into clay and then you've got to clean it all off. But instead of completely redoing the piece, you can just solder it on. And here is the finished piece. Thank you for watching a soldering video with soldering and the lost art of screen findings. Watch for more of our videos.